it's the tunnel of white light. There is this like blast of white light, and you fly through it, and it spits you into the afterlife dimension, and you immediately face the beings.
Hello and welcome to Passion Harvest. I am Louisa, your host. Thank you so much for joining me wherever you are in the world right now. I'm really excited about our guest today, Isabella Green. What happens after death? Is reincarnation, entrapment awaiting you? How do we prepare for the final departure? And is the departure really final? Isabella Green travels beyond the veil and explores realities of other dimensions in search of the answers to her most burning questions. One of these questions was about exiting the cycle of reincarnation on Earth. She also journeys to explore past life memories, beings that greet us after death, and astral projection into heaven and hell, and much more. Isabella is the author of Leaving the Trap: How to Exit the Reincarnation Cycle. Isabella Green, I'm so excited to have you on Passion Harvest. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Isabella, a big congratulations on your book, Leaving the Trap: How to Exit the Reincarnation Cycle. I've got so many questions for you, but I guess the first one is, how do we never reincarnate again?
Thank you for that. But well, I think that it takes a little work and it takes a little practice and preparation, but it is doable and achievable within this lifetime if a person desires to no longer continue being recycled within the earth plane. A lot of people prefer to be recycled within the earth plane. They love it here. And I had people asking me questions such as like, why would I even want to get out of reincarnation cycle? So these are the ones who are staying, but the ones who want to go can go through some practices and exercises and prepare themselves both emotionally, mentally, and also in a way of learning to operate their non-physical form while still alive. These are the recommendations that I give in my book, and so I'm pretty sure that they're going to be able to hop out once they take their final breath and after this lifetime.
So we have a choice whether to reincarnate or not.
This is the main idea. We're not usually presented with this choice. We're not presented with this choice by the handlers of the reincarnation cycle. Those who had near-death experiences can confirm that it's always kind of going around in circles until you agree to go back. And it's the same after you pass. And so it's because it's the same dimension, the afterlife dimension, handled by the same kind of beings. So but we're not really taught here on Earth. Now that information is starting to come out, but we were never taught that there was a different option. And just knowing that you can, if you want to, is very important.
Thanks, Isabella. So for those that haven't read your book yet, and I do recommend you do, what are some tips you could offer the Passion Harvest audience of how, if they choose to not to reincarnate again?
Well, first of all, it's very important to prepare emotionally and mentally, because since day one here, and since the very inception of the human race, we were conditioned that we are inferior to the spirits and angelic looking beings that pop in and start trying to convince us to reincarnate again. They give us our life review and tell us that we're not good enough, we didn't do so good, and we need to go back. And so, first of all, teaching yourself that you are a sovereign being who is as celestial and as divine as any apparition that's talking to you, so that you have discernment and not blindly following what they're telling you. That's number one. Number two, conditioning of feeling guilty. A lot of people feel guilty for their own existence here, and also conditioning of feeling not good enough. which goes hand in hand with what I just said, but it's also something that is being pressured onto us. The number one wound that the humanity has is feeling inadequate or feeling unworthiness. And since the whole industrial complex started a couple hundred years ago, that's been utilized in marketing and consumerism, and just you're being pressured to believe that you're not good enough unless you have this car, or you have this job, or you have some material possession. But so we're being conditioned to believe that we're not good enough from all directions. And so I recommend, if you want to get out of the reincarnation cycle, is to do the inner healing work so that you're able to get past this condition and heal this wound within yourself. So when you face the handlers, they are not able to guilt trip you or tell you you were not good enough, and convince you that you need to go and do better. Another thing is what I call, so this is guilt tripping. Guilt tripping is used very, very efficiently by the handlers of the reincarnation cycle. But there's also what I call love trapping. And that is something that we do here when we're really in love. We say, oh, I'll see you in the next lifetime. A lot of people say to their loved ones, I would love you cross time. I'll love you in my next lifetime. Or on the deathbed, people say, I'll see you in my next lifetime. And so if you have created this kind of vows with your loved ones, these are definitely going to be shown to you. And you're going to be presented with, again, feeling guilty that, oh, if you don't go back, then that soul is waiting for you in vain and you're breaking your word. Also, I just suggest that you go into the loving agreements, loving contracts, loving relationships here as much as you want to, but make sure that you have closure with these by the end of the lifetime, so that you are not guilt tripped or pressured based on these vows to come back. So these are the foundational ideas. There are more in my book, but these are the cornerstones of preparing yourself emotionally and mentally if you face negotiations with the handlers.
And just to clarify, thank you. And just to clarify, what are the handlers?
These are the beings that run the reincarnation cycle. Earth is surrounded by what we know is the astral plane. And because I've done a lot of astral projecting early in my life, and then I started what I call quantum traveling past that dimension and looking back. And I also had a couple of near-death experiences. And I've also interviewed a lot of people didn't really interview, but talked to a lot of people who had near-death experiences. I've come to the conclusion that the astral plane is what encompasses the afterlife. That's where the afterlife dimension is. This is where the near-death experiences take place. And this is where we go after we pass. And that realm is operated, or that whole system of reincarnation is operated by the shape-shifting beings that some call archons, but you don't really, they're going to present to you what you believe in. If you believe in Jesus Christ, you're going to face Jesus Christ, but it's not the real thing. If you believe in angelic beings, you're going to be surrounded by angelic beings. If you are in Hinduist tradition, for example, and you believe in Krishna, you're going to meet that being. They're telling you that you have to go back. If you don't believe in any of these, you're going to see your loved ones or the ones that you miss the most greet you and tell you that you need to go back, because they literally shapeshift into just anything that is going to be the most convincing for you.
Wow. I mean, that certainly explains one of the theories of why everyone has such different near-death experiences.
Right.
Whether you call them archons or shapeshifters, how do they profit from this reincarnation experience? What's in it for them?
Well, there is a belief that they are harvesting energy, vital energy of the human beings. That energy is called loosh. After I wrote the book, people started reaching out to me saying that term was coined by Robert Monroe. I never read Robert Monroe, never even heard of him until after I published the book and started giving the interviews, and people started reaching out to me saying that. But it is the vital energy of the human being that is especially delicious for the handlers when we're in suffering. So all gradations of suffering, if you zoom out and look at the whole human experience, I mean, suffering for the majority of the population is pretty much a standard kind of type of living. We don't even notice that we have these beliefs like no pain, no gain, love hurts, and like that kind of stuff. But it's very much ingrained in the human psyche that we have to suffer to get something in life, that we have to suffer that it's just the way it is. But the suffering is what produces the highest amount of that energy. And this is what the handlers profit or actually live off of.
I mean, it sounds kind of scary in my humanness. I have heard that the more negative we are or suffer or in a fear-based state, the more energy that's produced. Also, the other question is, are these thoughts our own?
I would suggest that there is a whole different structure to our thoughts, because I work with people, I do spiritual healing work, and I always start with childhood conditioning, and then we have entities who are attracted to the wounds that the person experienced during childhood conditioning. And let's mention that the person came into a specific family because they are paying off their karma, that's what they were sent back to earth to do. And so the family produces the kind of suffering and the kind of trauma that continues recreating or created that kind of trauma. And so to that, the entities are attracted. And so the person carries what's called auric attachments or hitchhikers in the energy field. And that is something that is the next layer. And these energies or these spirits, they dwell around Earth plane, and they amplify the thoughts that the person is already having based on the childhood conditioning. So there are a few layers to that, but it's all interconnected. This is why when I do the healing work, I go I look at all of it so that the person can correct the entire package for themselves.
Amazing. So complicated and intricate. How would we best avoid the handlers or the archons? I'm trying to think of the right word here. Taking our energy. Would it be such as getting happier or being in a more positive frame of mind?
Yeah, but faking it, there's this whole like high vibe tribe kind of idea that you always just like, yeah, but that's fake, because there's a lot of pain behind it, and that's just the way of escaping. And also the self-love very often is used as a mask. Oh, I love myself, I love myself. We put that person in front of the mirror for 30 minutes and then they're crying because that was just the thing that they believe that they're supposed to be saying and doing, but it hides the trauma even deeper. So the true path, in my opinion, is going into processing and releasing the traumas. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And yeah, developing a more positive outlook on things, because technically everything is neutral. Everything, how we respond to it, how we react to things, that's what make it good or bad, technically. Of course there are, big things that are bad by definition, but in our everyday life, how we respond to things determines what we feel, what we think. So there's a formula: what you think, what you feel, and what you focus on determines your state of being, the state of your energy, and the state of the field that you carry, and your vibrational state. And so that also creates the match to what you experience within this reality, to what you draw to yourself by the law of attraction. But if you have learned to generate inner peace, you've done your inner work, and even if you're in the process of doing the inner work, every next step will take you to the next octave of your vibrational state. And then you're meditating and you are doing spiritual practices to generate inner peace and stay in balance. That's plenty. And you will naturally reach the state, not of the burning high excitement, but the state of peaceful contentment. And that's neutral. So you're not feeling anyone in that space, in my opinion.
You did mention the law of attraction, that in some way we create our reality by our thoughts. Can you expand on that a little bit more for the audience, please?
Yes, of course. The question, why is this always happening to me? Right? There are some people that experience the same thing over and over. That starts from the childhood conditioning. Let's say a person felt overpowered by their primary caretakers. And so they step out of the house and they are constantly expecting to be attacked from all directions. And because they are expected to be attacked, and they are also feeling that anything can just come in and overpower them, that's the childhood imprint. It happens. They see it in everyday life, and they're just constantly trying to get away from that. And this is just a neutral vibrational match to the childhood trauma that took place, or the childhood imprint conditioning that took place when they were little. Or another thing with relationships, like love imprint. I do exercises with people when they come to me for sessions, where I show them what is running behind the scenes, what's generating their reality for them, what conditioning is generated. And even those who've been through therapy, they are always amazed. They have like an aha moment with that short exercise that I give them. So the love imprint, for example, if the child was conditioned since birth that love is abusive, and they didn't know any better, because when the child is brought into a home, they expect, it's a natural instinct that they are loved. That's what's imprinted in their subconscious mind. They come out of their parents' home, and they are the most attracted. Out of 100 people in front of them, they will be the most attracted to the one who would reproduce that same love imprint with them. And they are going to keep saying, why am I always in abusive relationships? So this is the neutral vibrational law. There is no punishment in it whatsoever. What we put out, we get back. What we are vibrating is shown back to us from the outer reality. So correcting what's going on internally also corrects the outer reality.
Yeah, so true, so interesting. Sometimes it's hard in our humanness. Just a question that came to me. Many of the audience have lost loved ones and are grieving or mourning or missing their loved ones. What is your advice for them?
Talk to them. My advice is talk to them because they didn't go all that far. I know that from my own experience with my father. My father passed last year, and I was able to communicate with him as soon as he was out of his physical body, more so than when he was alive, because the telephone or anything was no longer required. And I also work with people who often in grief. I don't specialize in grief, but sometimes they come in for the whole entire session, and then they would mention that, like they can't get over their father passing or whatever. Very often I just invite that spirit into the session, and that spirit talks to them, tells them. I don't channel dead people, but I kind of transcribe what they're saying because I can hear what they're saying. Literally, as soon as I call them in, I start hearing communication from them. So I convey the message to the people, and it makes it much easier for them. Literally, it generates closure for the people because the whole thing is that you feel that they're gone forever and there's no way to reach to them or talk to them or feel their presence, but they're around. They are able to observe you. They're able to send you messages. Very often these messages come through music. Birds carry the messages from the other side, or mediums, and there are people who specialize in communication with the other side. For example, Rinaldi is the last name. Sonia Rinaldi. Sonia Rinaldi, and there are documentaries on YouTube, and she has a website and stuff. She created a device that actually generates the images and the voice of the person from the other side. You can literally see and hear your loved one from the other side. It's incredible.
It's so fascinating. And I guess you said talk to them, but maybe it's just we have to be mindful they're not going to be communicating in the same way. You can't pick up the telephone. No. They're not necessarily going to communicate in words. You might not hear the whole conversation. Yeah. It's a different means of communication.
Right. It definitely is more telepathic, although I do hear words quite often. The beings from higher dimensions do not use words. I use concepts, but the loved ones, the human souls, they very often use words. And sometimes it'll be just one short phrase or a couple words, but I could hear my father loud and clear in words. So amazing. the ones who are within the human realm and the human afterlife, they do use words. Yeah. Although again, the messages can come in as music. Let's say you wake up and there's a song, the chorus of the song with specific words just playing in your mind. Look at the words. That could be the message from your loved one. Very often they communicate in that way if they cannot reach the person. And if the person is in high grief, they're heartbroken and everything is contracted, they are not able to hear anything otherworldly, then the loved ones are not able to reach out to them in words.
Thank you. You travel beyond the veil, have and still do all the time. I'd love to ask you about this. First, I guess you did detail it a little bit, but what happens when we die or when our physical body dies?
I've observed a few different scenarios, and these short observations in my book. At the beginning of my book, I give examples. And so I've observed that sometimes there's just a tunnel of white light. Sometimes I've seen there are two tunnels. One of them is of a different kind of light, different quality, and different kind of beings there, which are extraterrestrials that participate in our reincarnation cycle. Sometimes they're just extraterrestrial beings there, and that's more for the soul that perhaps is connected to this particular consciousness, and especially for those who have been interacting with the non-terrestrial consciousness. But there are certain planets that are involved in the Earth reality in a certain level of consciousness development. So you come out of the body and you're going to be vacuumed into one or the other. Most commonly, it's the tunnel of white light. There is this like blast of white light, and you fly through it, and it spits you into the afterlife dimension. And you immediately face the beings there. And they present you with a life review, and then you agree to go back to Earth after a little bit of rest, usually about 3 years in Earth time. And I just gauge that through the sessions that I do, because I read past lives for people, and I notice that about 3 years in Earth time goes by before the person returns. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But this is just the general kind of scenario. The number one thing to know is that it's a relief. We're all terrified of passing, but it's an incredible sense of relief. I know this from my own near-death experiences, but also from what my father told me from the other side after he passed. You're not dragging the physical body on yourself any longer. So there is this lightness. There's no more pain. There's no more emotional pain. There's no more physical pain. And there is a certain sense of liberation or freedom, although that freedom is not as all-encompassing as we wish it to be, because you're still within the constraints of the reincarnation cycle. But it is a relief. Getting out of the body is much easier than being in the body, in my perspective. So this is what I know, but there's also a different way of, you asked about going out of body. So we're talking passing away, yes, and we're talking astral projecting. But there's a different way of traveling out of body that I practice now, and I call that quantum travel, and that's a whole entirely different ball game.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I'd love to ask you about that in a minute, but just in the astral plane, or where we rest for a certain period of time, you called it a restful place. But before, you mentioned we also see, based on our beliefs, whether we believe in Jesus or God or Krishna, do our beliefs encompass what we experience as well during this astral phase after death?
You mean the afterlife dimension?
Yes, the afterlife dimension.
I've observed that it's the beings that greet you that come in different shapes and forms depending on your beliefs, but as the actual afterlife dimension is pretty much the same, but it has variations. Like if you expect a garden, you're going to be in a garden. If you expect like something that you have in mind that is like heaven-like, that's what you're going to experience. But you'll see the transparency of yourself and the lightness of being and transparency of souls and beings around you. You will also feel kind of the music of the spheres. And you're not really hearing it through your ears, because at that point you don't have ears, but it feels like you're just floating within that music. The colors are very soft, like pastel colors. And it's like a rainbowish kind of feeling to it. This is the majority of the stories that I have experienced. Although when I had my first near-death experience, I did not go into that. I just went to completely white space. Just there was absolutely nothing there. Everything was just white light. But let's just say in the majority of cases, it's a very pleasant experience, and people are changed by their near-death experiences because it allows them to kind of dip their toe into the freedom of the soul, which again is not presented in its entirety, but the lightness of being that is our innate right. And so people come back transformed because they experience that, and they also experience the sense of love, which a lot of human beings are starved for here on this planet.
Yes. And just a last question on this. For those that believe in purgatory, or they've been a bad person, or there is a hell, do they experience that?
There is a lower astral plane, and you go there temporarily if you are a bad person. There is kind of like a rehab, short period of time until where you really kind of bounce around really uncomfortable experiences. It's nothing is burning there, and it's a little worse than what's happening on Earth. Like there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of bullying, there's a lot of mazes, there are astral wars there. So it's a dark place, but pretty soon afterwards, you're going to be summoned by the handlers and presented with the life review, and you're going to be told that, you see, you did all this horrible stuff. Now you're going to go back and be the same done unto you, and this is your karma. And you say, yes, of course. And so, and then they hang out in the afterlife in the upper astral, which we consider heaven, just as well as everyone else. That's as far as I have observed, and that's as far as I know.
Thank you, Isabella. You spoke about the soul. Is the higher self or the soul the same thing? And what is that?
What is soul?
Yes.
Well, what lives within our physical form is just a tiny speck of the entirety of the soul that we belong within, called oversoul, or the fabric of reality, the infinite field of information, if you wish. That's the essence of everything. That's the energy that creates and sustains worlds, and it creates our soul. It doesn't create it. We're just an extension of that into this physical experience. Our bodies are made of the same energy, except they're more condensed. And we're just, once we enter this reality on the earth plane, we get cut off from the awareness that we're a part of the bigger energy of the soul. But we're never cut off from it for real. We just don't have the awareness of it right here.
Yeah, or the remembrance. So you spoke about the oversoul. I have heard that all our lives, past lives or future lives, as depending on the term you use, are happening now. What's your thoughts on this?
This is the concept of time, which only exists within specific dimensions. So are there parallel timelines? Definitely, but we don't have the awareness of them because we are limited within the awareness of our immediate physical experience. But there are such things as timeline shifts, for example, where you literally shift and experience almost the same reality, except it's a little bit different. And that's when you shifted a timeline, and that could be done by choice, or that could be done spontaneously. And we're constantly shifting timelines spontaneously. That's happening. And so we are multidimensional beings having multiple experiences and infinite amount of possibilities simultaneously, but we're blocked to the awareness of that. Yeah, I agree that everything is happening simultaneously outside of the limited dimension of time-space continuum, and especially when we have filters to filter that out.
Gosh, you explained that so well. Thank you. So, how, if we would like to, how would we jump timelines to potentially a higher frequency or a high vibrational timeline?
Well, it is right back to doing the inner work, and also perhaps engaging in spiritual practices that allow you to experience a different state of being. Because when you experience a different state of being, you experience a different timeline. I have literally worked with people who, let's say, came to me at a certain point, and I read their past lives, and it was all horrible experiences. I don't know, let's just say crime and this and that, and they just, in this lifetime, just came out of jail. And so they're matching the timeline that links them to all of that. Then they do the inner work, they clean up their lifestyle, they engage in spiritual practices that allow them to elevate their state of being. They come back to me 3 years later, for example, and I read their incarnations, and they're matching ascended masters, or something like an entirely different story. And this is an example because, again, that also works based on a vibrational match. What you pull into your awareness and what you connect, the timeline that you're connected to is linked directly to what you're experiencing on right now and what you are focused on right now and what you're vibrating right now. So you vibrate differently, you're on a different timeline.
Thank you. You spoke, I have to ask, quantum travel, what is this? Sure. And what does it look like, and what do you experience? I'm going to leave the answers to you.
Of course. What I call quantum travel is a very different form of out-of-body experience than astral projecting, for example. So for astral projecting, you relax as deeply as you can, and you softly float out of your body, and you stand in the same room where your body is laying. You can turn around and look at it, and you are limited by traveling, astral traveling within the astral plane. If you reach the outer skirts of the astral plane, you're going to be hitting the glass ceiling, or you're going to be hitting the layer that is not going to let you come out past that layer, and you're also going to have interference trying to get you back into the body. So, and also astral travel is associated with speed, meaning you are moving from one point to the other, and it takes some sort of time. So you're not just instantly there. But these are my experiences with astral travel, and I've done astral travel since I was like 17 to maybe about 23, 4, something like that. Recently, though, recently, 9 years ago, I learned the meditative technique and the breath work that I do in the middle of the night that awakens the Kundalini energy and also helps you come out of your physical form, but you bypass the astral plane. I call that the quantum travel. It's not gentle at all. It shakes your body like crazy, and you literally like a rocket fly out of the top of the head, and you instantly find yourself in a different dimension that has nothing to do with Earth reality. At the present time, I land predominantly in the void, what's called the void, and it's not a place, it's a state of being. That's the energy that creates and sustains worlds, the source consciousness. And because it creates everything, if you have a desire to go elsewhere, have that in mind before you launch out of your body, and you will instantly be in that other or a different reality that you want to check out. So this is the quantum travel. It's very different, and it's instant. Yeah. So the difference between astral and quantum is how fast you go, and also where you can end up at.
Thank you. So I just want to ask about the void. This is you said the source of creation. This is a positive, I guess we're going to use the word positive. This is a positive space.
That's everything. It encompasses everything. It's not positive or negative. It's neutral.
It just is.
Yeah.
And so hard to put in words. Can you describe it for the audience? And for me?
I can describe the state of being that I experience when and saying I'm there makes it sound like it's a place, but it's not a place. It's a state of consciousness. It's a state of reality. It's the energy that generates a reality, all of it. So technically it's God, or technically it's the source consciousness. When you have left your body behind and you have entered that state of being, there's an awareness. There's a very slight awareness of yourself as the human being. As a matter of fact, you don't remember yourself as a human being any longer. But you are consciousness. You are conscious in that state of being, and you experience the presence of literally everything, and at the same time nothing at all, because that space isn't completely black. There's nothing there, absolutely nothing there. But so for those who landed there, and I've only talked to 3 people so far, aside from myself, so 2 other people so far who landed in that space during the near-death experiences. And my big question is, why these 3 people, actually 3, yeah, I'm the 4th. 3 people went into the state of the void, while the rest go through the tunnel and interact with the handlers. So this is something I'm digging into right now. But those who landed in the state of the void without adequate preparation, without knowing what it is, they're usually terrified because there's nothing there. It appears like there's nothing there, and the human mind wants, something. Presence, company, terrain of some sort, something, So there was one person that I heard saying that he was absolutely terrified, and 2 other people experienced the same that I experienced, was that this is the most incredible, the best state of consciousness you could possibly experience, and the state of love. The unconditional love is neutral, really. So you experience that state from all directions. You're just in the state of complete peace, complete unconditional love. And that's about all that I can put in words, and then there's presence of everything, and at the same time, absolutely nothing there. So I want to go there after I pass in this lifetime and just stay for a while at least, until my soul decides, or a part of my consciousness decides that I want to personify or take some sort of shape form in a different reality.
I'm talking from my humanness here.
Right.
Do you have any, when you're in the void, are there thoughts? Are you thinking about anything?
You can't think because you don't have the brain.
Right.
But the consciousness is there, and so there is an awareness of everything. It's very hard to put in words, but let's say if you have a question before you launch, before you go into the void, into that state of being, if you have a question, when you go and you have that experience, when you come back into your body, chances are you're going to have an answer right in your mind, right there, because that's the field, quantum field of information, or whatever else it's called, the infinite field of possibility, well, I don't even remember all of the words that I used to describe that. Yeah.
So you touched on this, but what's the point of it all? Why are we here? Big question.
only the question of this, the whole existence, really. I only know my own experience because I'm not really I don't really pay too much attention to what other teachers offer, only very few select ones, because I want to keep my information pure. All right, I don't want something to influence me. But so my experience was that I remembered, and that story is in the book, I remembered how I got lured into coming into Earth plane. And I was in an entirely different state of being, entirely different environment, entirely different consciousness. I was on the red planet. By the way, someone just read my book and created a whole bunch of artwork from the red planet, and it's on YouTube. Just they reached out to me and said that it was so inspiring. They seem to be having the similar memories. So it's so incredible. So I was in an entirely different state of being. We were sharing consciousness, but at the same time we were individualized. And I received, we received a distress call that came through the transmitter that was on our planet, like a mountain kind of thing, because everything was alive and everything, we were connected to all expressions of life. We were all non-physical except the actual planet. So I remember the feeling that I'm infinite and I'm powerful, meaning like I'd never experienced any limitation within that reality, and I want to go and help that world in distress that's sending out distress calls, and that was Earth. And literally the second I had that idea or that feeling that, yeah, I started being pulled into an entirely different state of being, which felt denser and denser, like let's say from the state of air into water, into mud. And then I was in a physical form, which was not human first. And then I'm trapped because I got killed in that non-physical, that other form. And then I started going into human. So why am I here? I came here to thinking that I can assist and get out. But until this lifetime, until right now, I had no idea in all of my thousands of years of incarnations on Earth that I can actually get out and how. But this lifetime, I'm aware of that. So why are we here? I think we volunteer, a lot of us volunteered to come here for one reason or another. And now we're just running in circles around Earth plane, being like a battery for the beings that lured us here, I think.
So I get the impression you're not planning to come back.
No.
That was a definite no.
Definitely not. And I have an eye on a different reality that I enjoy visited very much, and that's within the Andromeda galaxy. There's this lovely little planet there and the state of being there that I really appreciate, and I've discovered it through my quantum travels. And I think that after I'm done enjoying the peace of the void, maybe I'll go there and have a light body experience there. So we'll just see. And it's not going to be me like the way I'm talking right now as a human. I wouldn't even remember that, but that's something, just a thought that maybe that reality could be something I could check out next.
So there's so many other planets and dimensions and galaxies out there, and life forms in whatever, not necessarily in human life, but in life forms of some way.
Yeah. And my recommendation to the people who are planning to get out is to scope what's out there. I had no idea about most of what I know now, or where I've been now, what I've experienced now, outside of Earth reality. We know our neighboring planets and constellations that are being talked about, but there's so much more, and you can just go ahead and experience what you resonate with, what feels good to you. And then that could be something where you will hop after you pass this time. And the ideal case scenario is that you've learned how to quantum travel while you're still alive, which means while you're passing, you're not going to go into the afterlife dimension. You go straight into the void, or you go straight to the place where you have already selected for yourself. That takes away the fear of death, and it gives you infinite choices.
Thank you. One more question. I read that you're influenced by the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I think he's wonderful. What's the key takeaway, or the few key takeaways from his work that you admire?
Well, Dr. Joe Dispenza, I encountered the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza in 2010 when I was first starting to wake up again after 20 years of kind of being in a spiritual coma. And his meditative techniques assisted me tremendously. And I used his meditative techniques to process my traumas. So not exactly what he's teaching, but I saw how powerful that was. And I figured that I could utilize it for that. And then the whole quantum travel, that's based on what he was teaching. He taught in 2014, he taught the mid-sleep nighttime meditative technique to activate your pineal gland and to awaken your Kundalini energy. And I started doing that. And I don't use his guided meditations at night anymore, but I definitely use the breath work. And so the breath work that he offers is called the cosmic cobra breath, or the Tantric Kriya Kundalini Pranayama. And that is called the biggest gift of Babaji to humanity, part of Kriya Yoga. And that's what assists people in self-actualizing. And that is the practice that changes your life, even if you are a non-believer in one way or another. I was very dense. I was very corporate. I was a rock and roller also, like a rock star at night, corporate during the day, super analytical, super traumatized, addicted, and sick in every part of my body. And that was 2010. And now I am in the best health I've ever been, and I quantum travel the cosmos, and I work to help humanity heal their traumas. So if you would have told me that in 2010 when I first encountered Dr. Dispenza's work, I would have never believed it.
And look at you now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, sorry, please.
It all happened gradually, piece by piece. But if you start engaging in the practices that he teaches, it will change your life, given that you allow it. You allow your life to change.
And things take time, unfortunately. Sometimes we want things instantly, but it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah. And everything is expanding slowly based on your comfort zone. A lot of people want it immediately, and if it happens immediately, they freak out. If I was told 10 years ago where I was going to be today, I would have probably turned around and gone back to the corporate world, because it would have sounded like complete insanity to me. Yeah. But so if we are fed in small portions, our abilities open up in correlation with our own comfort zone, and we just proceed as long as we don't stop, And I was very curious and had a very strong intention to find out what I can do while still being alive.
Yes, well, definitely your calling. Isabella, I've loved having you on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the Passion Harvest audience that I haven't asked you?
I believe that the number one recommendation for anyone is to learn how to generate inner peace. Because once you learn how to generate inner peace and put yourself into that state, at least for 15 minutes a day, you're going to influence your reality. You're going to influence your own state of being. Your life will get easier. And this also contributes to world peace. I think if we all did that every day, all of us, then we would live in an entirely different reality. So my recommendation to the listeners is to learn how to generate inner peace.
Oh, what a beautiful way to end the show. And I will leave a link for listeners or watching to contact you on your website, which is behind you if people are watching this, but I will leave a link in the show notes below. Isabella Green, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest. My gosh, what a wealth of information. Thank you.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you liked this episode, please do subscribe for weekly passionate, inspirational interviews.